Any second. All right, we are live on Facebook. Welcome everyone on a Friday. Usually I do this on Thursdays. Well, it changes. Usually Wednesdays or Thursdays. I'm here on Friday afternoon with my friend, Master Jolene Westraad. Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good.
Awesome. We got through our technical issues, and you've locked yourself in your office away from all of the kids doing schoolwork.
The only way to do it, you got to lock the doors.
How's the e-learning camp going?
It's actually been going really well for us, actually, surprisingly well. So I just don't want to jinx it. But, yeah, no, we've got about 11 kids coming in with us every day, just logging on, doing their schoolwork. The trickiest part is the whole, like, when we've got some on recess, some on lunch, and some learning, kind of that overlap. But outside of that, they've been pretty good. I just feel bad for these kids. Being locked onto computers for like 8 hours at a time is rough.
Yeah, same concern here at my house. Are you by yourself? You have some help?
No, I've got some help, which makes a big difference as well. Yeah.
Gotcha. That is helpful. Because I know just doing summer camps by myself can often be hectic. I can't imagine having to coordinate. You said 11 kids, 11 different schedules. It's just crazy.
Yeah, that's actually that's one thing this summer too. It was the first year we did like 11 weeks of summer camp as well. Mm-hmm. But it was the first year that I didn't do it all myself. Like we actually got other help in, which was, I'll be honest, that was a very hard shift for me to do because I tend to like to be in control. So, just kind of trusting other people to do it. And it made a huge difference. So, just trying to learn and grow myself through some of this experience,
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I know that all too well, having done camps myself, and yeah, it's hard to let go. How's the studio itself? How are classes?
It's good. So we're back to our 6 days a week schedule. We've got classes Monday through Saturday. Some of them are inside, some of them are outside. And then we've also got online training options as well. Everybody's at a different place, and we want to make sure we're meeting our students where they're at and just doing the best we can to serve everybody. Everybody's got, different feelings and thoughts about where it is and, different circumstances that they're dealing with. So, but I think once we go back to normal, we're all going to have so much time on our hands that we never realized that we actually did initially. It'll be nice.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how much work we're doing to keep up with even less. You mean as far as our classes go,
right?
The amount of work we put in for, we're slowly ramping up, but still not even close to where we were as far as March goes.
Right. And nothing's quite the same, so it's been interesting. I was laughing when the first 2 weeks happened, when they asked for those first 2 weeks. I remember thinking like, oh, this will be nice. Like I'll get stuff done around my house, and I'll, and nothing happened because I was so busy. Right. And then, a couple of friends would call and they'll be like, so what's it like having some free time? Because, typically, I mean, and this, like when you're working in schools and stuff like that, you really are putting in a lot of hours.
Sure.
And I was laughing at them. I said, I've never worked harder in my entire life than I am at the moment. Like I've got less free time than what I had before this, but it's the season we're in, and just like anything, right? We work around it, we pivot, we make it work. It's, just like we do with our martial arts, right? We just apply the same kind of concepts to business. I mean, I don't think we always think about it that way, but it really is what it is, right? If a technique doesn't work, you don't just keep trying the same technique over and over again. You switch to something else and take it and adapt it and mush different things together. You guys that have all that Hapkido training like to do that, right? You go from this into this into this into this into that.
Right.
It works.
Yeah. No, I just remember March, April, May. It was like Facebook Messenger videos, doing private lessons during the day, Zoom classes at night. We had some Zoom classes during the day for a while. It was crazy.
No, it was definitely an experience.
I got a couple people. Master Benelli says Tung Su, and Pam Russell from Region 5. I got Lindsay from Great Britain. She's
hey guys.
watching along. Awesome. Well, again, thank you for doing this with me. You and I have obviously we've been friends for a while now through martial arts training with Master Godwin. Originally, I remember you and Eddie, Master Stum, used to come down on Tuesday mornings.
Yep.
And then throughout the years, especially right now in our crazy instructor text group,
Yes.
just sharing everything going on, with all this craziness. But it helps us to get through and continue. Like you said, you get so busy and days are so long. It's nice to be able to laugh with people that know what you're going through.
Yeah, they're kind of like in the trenches with you. Yes, because it doesn't matter if how much you try and explain it to somebody who doesn't do it. It's just they don't fully understand.
Right. Okay, so we're gonna go. I'm gonna get started with my. I almost said line of questioning. What we usually like to start, or what I usually like to start with, is just talk to us about your interest in martial arts, where that came from, and how you got started in the martial arts.
Um, the interesting thing is, in the beginning, I actually didn't. It's not that I didn't want to do it. I just never thought to do it, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So my dad had trained for years in South Africa. He got in his junior black belt at 16 and, had taught and stuff like that through the years. And then had to stop when, in South Africa back then, all the men had to do 2 years in the army after high school. So when he went into the army, he did some boxing there and that, but like, his martial arts training had to stop because obviously, he had to do all the time there. And then he did his schooling, and him and my mom got married, and, they were moving around, and he just never kind of got back into it, but always wanted to. So when how old was I? We were about 6 or 7, and we moved to George, which is where we lived before we moved here. And it was the first time my dad had like more of that like 9 to 5 job again, because he was a consultant initially, and that allowed him to get back into his martial arts. And so, he was busy training at a school, and my brother, I'm trying to think. So I was 7. So my brother had just been born. So about 3 years after that, my brother was about 3.5, and in preschool. And my dad really wanted to get him involved with karate. But, like we said, most people typically start at 4, right? Right. And back then, just from a developmental point of view, it works better. That was kind of about the same back then. And, they were following a lot of those same guidelines. And my dad's instructor's wife had said that she was going to be going to his preschool to do the lessons, like some of us will do, people ask us to come in.
Sure.
And after like a week, she was like, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. The 3-year-olds were just a little bit much. And I remember, like now, especially looking back as an instructor, I think I was always very grateful for the fact that and this is just a general life lesson. I think when people aren't cut out to work with kids, I think it's always important to recognize that. I think we all have different skill sets, and we need to know, if something's not for us, because if we're doing things that maybe we're not actually cut out for, we can end up doing a lot of damage sometimes, or putting a lot of stress on ourselves. We need to enjoy what we do, right? It's part of the process. So at about the same time, a very close family friend of ours was starting up his own school. So he did a Japanese style. It was Okinawan Goju-ryu. His son was actually in school with me. We were very good friends. They lived like 3 or 4 houses down from us. They were good family friends. And so he'd said to my dad, well, I'm starting up my own school. So, if you want, I'm happy to take him. I know he's a little young, but it's a new school, we'll make it work. And just to be, my dad, I know, had thought about that for my brother, because he wanted them to like, kind of have something to connect with. I do want to be fair to say, I have a twin sister and a younger sister. And I don't think my dad intentionally didn't think about karate for us at that point, but we were just all involved with like a lot of other sports. And they were just at that point starting to look at my brother getting involved, because there's like a 7-year age difference between us.
Okay.
So when he started, both my sisters decided they wanted to do it, and my mom and my dad. Oh. And they'd asked me, and I was just kind of like, like I said, it wasn't that I was like, no, I don't, but I wasn't like, oh yes, let me definitely do it. But it was, I was swimming, I was doing ballroom dancing, I was doing ballet at the time, I was playing field hockey, I was doing squash. Like we had so many different sports going on that I was just busy. Well, like the first class or 2 that they went to, because everybody was training, I had to be there anyway. So I was sitting on the side, and then I was like, well, this is stupid. If I'm going to be here anyway, I might as well do it, because I always like being active.
Right.
And from the minute I stepped onto the floor, it just bit. And, fast forward, how old am I now? 30, like 27, 28 years, and I'm the only one left standing out of the family, But yeah, it was once I started doing it, I just fell in love with it. It just met all the kind of areas of my personality. It just worked well. And when we moved, that was one of the biggest things. I knew that I wanted to get involved with martial arts again right away, and it just kind of evolved into it now being a full-time thing for me.
Right. You said that was your original training was in Georgia?
No, the town was called George.
Oh, George.
Oh, George,
oh,
yeah. So it's a little,
Africa.
yeah. So it's
okay.
if you know where Cape Town is, it's like 4 hours east on the coast. It was like a little beach town that I grew up in. Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. So when did your family move to the States?
So it was the summer of 97. So what are we going, 23 years ago?
Sure.
Does that sound right? Did I do my math right?
Yeah, no, yes, you can math. It's yeah. All the kids taking class over there is rubbed off on
you. It's brain fatigue. I'm at the end of a week. It's done.
So how did you end up, was East Coast Karate the first school that you found?
Yeah, so with the way my dad got transferred, there were actually a lot of other South African families that had already come across to this area where we're in Glen Mills, because it was Deloitte and Tush, and their main office was here. So when we moved, we just moved to the same area because the schools already knew how to transfer us in. There was some of the families that were here were families that we knew in South Africa. So there was a little bit of familiarity. And like I said, when we heard that we moved, outside of obviously missing our friends and that, for me and my brother in particular, we were like, well, we want to make sure we, continue on with our martial arts training. I was actually a couple of months out for testing for my black belt, with them and that as well. So, we put in a lot of time. And so when we got here, we started looking around. Initially, we were obviously looking for the same style as well. But, I'm sure you're aware, in this area, it's very much the Korean styles that tend to be available. We couldn't find a Japanese style anywhere. And it just so happened that East Coast Karate was opening the same time, because we opened our doors in 1997. And my dad had come home the one day and he said, hey, listen, we'd probably only been here for a couple of weeks or whatever. And he'd said, there's a school that's just open. They're offering a trial. I know it's not quite what you're looking for style wise, but also, like I said, I was 15, my brother was 8. So he ultimately said to me, you're the one that's going to make the decision. You're older. Duncan will just end up wherever you end up, but why don't we just go and try it out? And it was the same thing. I walked in, and the minute we met, Master DePietro, and, got on the floor with him. And then, back then it was Mr. Stum and Mr. DePietro, Master Stum now, and started training underneath. I just knew I'd found my place, you just know. And which was great, because one of my concerns was, my instructor, and when you've been in martial arts for a very long time and you start getting exposed, especially through tournaments and different things, to other schools, whether they're within the same style or not, that there's different types of instructors out there. And my instructor in South Africa and I had a very, good relationship, and he was a phenomenal instructor. And, if you have an instructor, that's good. It's easy to find another good instructor. But when you've got somebody who's just really, really great, it's sometimes hard to switch over because you don't know what you're going to get. And sorry. When we came in there, I knew that was going to happen at some point. Somebody tried to call through and it started vibrating. When we met Master Petra, I just knew I'd found where I wanted to be. Just from the person that he was to the type of technician that he was to the instructor that he was. It was just a good fit. And like I said, Mr. DePietro, his brother was teaching at the time, his brother-in-law, Master Stum, his wife at that, Abby was teaching here as well. And it was just a great environment. And, we pretty much came and we started back at our white belts again. And I don't regret it. Sometimes people say, well, you were so close to black belt. Like if you had to do it all over again, knowing what but you could have gone and done an Okinawan style instead. I wouldn't have changed for the world. I'd have started right back in the beginning because, what the last 23 years have done for me,
Mhm.
I wouldn't be who I was without it.
Awesome. Do you feel like any of the Japanese style, do you retain any of that, like your base from that, or is it just kind of it's just your martial arts at this point?
I've never really thought about that. I mean, I guess probably a little bit because it had some base, but like if you had to ask me to like knock out one of the forms again or something like that, it's been so long since
Yeah.
I've ever touched that I'd have to do a whole lot of studying first.
It's interesting because I've had people come over. The Japanese styles are similar in stance and things like that. Like
Right.
the Kimpo is probably the most stylized, where you can tell like they're a Kimpo stylist most of the time. So
Right.
yeah, I was just interested if were there any any hard habits you had to break when you started at East Coast?
The only thing that probably would stick out in my mind would be at least the style that I did, the Japanese stances seem to be a little bit shorter
Okay,
than
sure.
what we do. So
Yeah.
just lengthening some things up. But outside of that, it was just, it's like just learning something new, right? We just kind of adapt and move, but it was also a very long time ago. So,
Yeah.
so that, it also makes it hard to remember
Right.
sometimes.
So there's a couple more people saying hi. Brian Lineker from Region 7.
Hi.
Master Setianto says her voice is so enchanting.
I
uh,
paid him to say that.
yeah, right. Angel Salona says hello, and one of my students, Mike McGonigal, says hello. So we got some
Hey
people
guys.
watching along. Um, so you start at East Coast. You said 97.
Mm-hmm.
When did you get your black belt? Probably the same.
2001.
Okay, gotcha.
2001, yeah, was my senior year. Yeah.
Um, how was training back then with him? You said you kind of fell right into it, but how was the training at East Coast at that time?
Like in what sense?
Like, was it harder than
Oh,
what you experienced?
it was a very different time period. Like I think most of us would agree that how we were taught is probably different than how we can teach nowadays. Um, so it was definitely a little bit more of the old school, maybe not quite as old school as what he had.
Right.
But I think that the attitude back then was a little bit different. You just did what your instructor asked you to do. You didn't maybe question as much. Whereas I find now kids want to know, right? Like, what's coming next? What's happening? Explain this to me. There's not as much just like, yes, I'll do. I mean, they're good about it. Don't get me wrong. But I think we live in a very different culture now than what we did 20 years ago. It was definitely hard. He had very high expectations. He set very high standards. Which is awesome. I do believe, and I've always believed this, that, people rise to the standards that you set for them. And he did. He expected a lot from his students. And we did, we stepped up. We wanted to impress him. And, so you did what you needed to do to make it happen. I've always enjoyed being challenged as well. And, the more I'm challenged, the more I'm going to push through to see, really what I'm kind of capable of. So
I didn't get the chance to really see him as a martial artist, but I've obviously heard many stories of his, technical expertise. Um, what were some of the? I'm sure he showed you guys a lot of techniques, but just talk about Master DePietro a little bit for those of us and those around never got a chance to be around him or see him do martial arts.
he was just, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. He was a very dedicated, very disciplined person, but very caring as well. Like he cared about his students. I think that always made the biggest impact. And I think also why you just felt it. Like you could just tell, that he enjoyed what he did and it mattered and it was important to him that people learn things the right way. And, he wanted to make sure that you rose to whatever potential you had, right? And he was very good at reading people. He knew when to push and he knew when you were at your your max, and would know how to acknowledge that and make you feel good about that, and I think the thing that always stuck out to me was just how much people mattered and to him. It was about putting people first and wanting them to be good people, and to use martial arts to do that. It wasn't just about teaching, punching and kicking, right? But it was about getting the discipline and the focus and the respect and building the confidence and, taking the time, like, it always, he would know when he was talking to parents, what every kid's name was, what the parents did, their history. If their kids had brothers and sisters, even if they didn't train, like he just remembered everything about them, and made people feel important. And then, like I said, at the same time, held high standards for his students. He wanted us to work hard and understand the discipline and just, what martial arts really is about,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you could see that throughout the years. I remember coming up through the ranks, there was always young guys and yourself included, girls who were East Coast karate instructors that had come up through the ranks as kids, and then into their teens and 20s they became these great martial artists. I don't think it was an accident that those kids were nurtured into the martial artists that they were.
Well,
So,
thank you. Yeah, I think he would have been very pleased to hear you say something like that as well.
including your brother. You said he's not around anymore, but I
No,
think.
he's out in California enjoying the beaches out there.
But he trained. He got up to third degree, right?
He did. Yep. Yeah. He only. I should probably know how long ago he moved to California. I don't remember, but no, he got his third degree and taught for quite a while as well at the Edgemont location.
So when did you get the bug to actually help out and assist in classes?
Pretty early on. So when I did move here, like I said, the school had just opened, so I was also one of the first students. So that also put me as one of the highest students a lot of times as we moved through. Like now, if we have a lot of our assistant instructors, a lot of times they're typically black belts that are doing it. When I started, I'd say I probably started helping in some capacity, like an orange green belt, maybe even, but like little things, right? Like holding targets. I'd get there early, just anything, like if you just needed me to be a partner with somebody, anything like that. And I probably, it was a long time ago. I'm trying to get my back straight. I want to say I probably started helping, like teaching, like with the little dragons and stuff like that, maybe even at like green, brown belt level. And then, just kind of moving up. So I started fairly early on in the process. And it was a combination of stuff on the floor and then also doing office work, getting some of the admin stuff done, dealing with parents, that kind of thing.
So you took to that part of the job fairly early on.
Yeah.
That's surprising. Because I love the teaching part, and then the admin, like office stuff, was like, I gotta make phone calls. I gotta make these absentee phone calls. I don't want to do that stuff. But you were drawn to that type of stuff.
That's one of the things that I've always loved about this, is that I feel like so many different parts of my personality kind of get met, because I do definitely love like the admin computer, like numbers and typing and like thinking things and dealing with people with that. But I also obviously love being on the floor and having the difference and, being able to interact with all different ages and, being more active. So it kind of hits both, which has always been kind of cool, right? I'm not just stuck behind a desk, but I'm also not getting some of that like itch scratched, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So knowing that Master Petro originally came up through Shin Karate, were there any instructors that would come through from that time, like Master Fisher or Master Marvel or any guys like that in those early?
Yeah, we definitely had quite a bunch of them that would come in and guest instruct with us. For a long time, we had a Masters Club program where we had a lot of, the masters come in and teach. Master Manelli would come in with the judo. We'd have Master Godwin come up. Master Fisher would come and teach. A lot of times. We had so many of them. Master Setiantos would come and, do their sword, and Master Mrs. Setianto, Mrs. Master whichever way she goes. She would
Whatever.
come in, with the nunchuck stuff. It was neat. I know I'm missing people, and I'm sorry if I am, but we definitely would once a month like try and get different instructors in, and him having the connections were definitely awesome. They would come in and do it, and it was a real treat for a lot of our black belts. We really enjoyed that time period as well.
It's one of the great things, having the headquarters for so long be situated where it was,
Yes.
and then so many schools being close proximity. It's a nice luxury that I know a lot of studios don't have, but
Yeah.
it's a luxury that I'm thankful for to have. People.
It is, because when you have all that interaction and people being able to help each other out and go and teach at other schools and have people come in and do it, I just think it opens up this, for the instructors. It's just nice to see people that we've trained with over the years, right? Because there are friendships and that definitely develop, but also just to give our kids a window into what else is out there. And, we all have our strengths, right? So when somebody else comes in and they maybe see something a little bit differently, or maybe show something in a little bit of a different way, it just opens up a whole new paradigm for these students when they're trying to learn in that as well.
Right. So when you started at that school, you probably had no idea what the World Tong Soo Do Association was.
No.
When did you realize that there was more to the Tong Soo Do than just what was in your studio?
When I started tournaments, because that automatically just opens you up to everybody else that's out there.
When did you start competing, as far as?
Pretty much from the beginning.
Okay.
Whatever the first tournament was that he told us about, I was pretty much there. Yeah.
Was it mostly just the Region 8 tournaments, or were there open tournaments?
Yeah. Well, we didn't do the open tournaments, so it was mostly association tournaments. But back then, you had the Red Rose, you had the regionals, you had, I know there was a spring one. I want to say there were, and Tim, you can help me with this if can correct me if I'm wrong. I want to say we had about 4 or 5 tournaments a year.
About right.
Right?
Like you said, there was the Red Rose, there was the Vaughn's Winter Championship.
Right. You had regionals, you had worlds. On every other, and there was definitely another one in there somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Am I making this up?
It depends. Yeah, depending on what year you looked at.
That's true too. Yeah. And then there was also a lot of times we had some of the GUP clinics, right, that were offered around then, where you could go. Pretty much any of that stuff that was offered and available, I participated in and took advantage of. And then you get closer to black belt. You've got the black belt camps that open up a whole new world to you as well. Yeah, and like as you're doing it, you're tending to start seeing a tournament, and this, right? You see the same people in your rings, and the friendships really just develop and forge. And I think those camps also really are where a lot of them solidify, because you're spending a couple of days together, training and eating, and doing all that stuff with your cabins and other people.
Awesome. What did like competing? What drew you to the different tournaments and competing?
I'm just very competitive. I just enjoy that. And I like that it puts a different focus on your training sometimes, because when you're competing, things just change a little bit. I like to see kind of like how I measure up as well. And not necessarily with other people, but with myself. Because I think and I found this true for myself, is when I would compete, I would know how I did compared to the previous tournament, not necessarily as far as placing goes, but as far as how I felt when I was done with what I wanted to perform. Were my stances better? Were my kicks higher? Was there more snap? The intensity, that kind of thing. It just allowed you to kind of put it to another level. And then there was the social side of it too. I do tend to like to talk to people. So I'd look forward to seeing people and meeting different people. It was just a fun day. But I definitely have a little bit of a competitive streak, and that helped a lot.
So one of the things that probably a lot of people don't know was you won the grand champion at Worlds. And what was that? 2002, 4?
I think it was 2.
2?
Yeah.
So what were you a first degree at that point, or?
I think so. Yeah, I think I was the first degree when I won that.
Was that your first Worlds?
No.
No.
98. So my third then. I did 98,
Oh, okay.
2000, 2002. Yeah, it was my third Worlds.
Awesome. Those were the days where they would, go to Orlando or I'm trying to
We
think.
went at Anaheim was one year.
Yep,
I do remember
Anaheim.
Anaheim. I don't remember what year, where they were in different years, but yeah, I
Anaheim
know.
was 2006.
Okay.
And then '04 was my first Worlds. That was in Orlando.
Yeah, they tended to, and they might have done. Okay, Anaheim might have been 2002 as well.
Gotcha.
Possibly. I think they like to try and go from East Coast to West Coast, if I remember correctly. I know
Right.
there were some others before that, but I think the first one for me was Orlando. So 98 was definitely Orlando. 2000, I'm not sure 2000, but I tended to go back and forth. But that's also when I realized like how much I didn't understand about the geography of this country. Was the first California one, because I remember talking to my parents about it, and I was like, oh, we can just drive there. How long is it going to take? A couple of hours. And then they were like, yeah, no. And then I saw the map and I was like, oh wait, America's a lot bigger than what I tend to think it is.
So that 2002, that would have been the first time you're competing as a black belt at Worlds.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Tell us about some of the memories from that time. Did it feel like a different day, like when you were competing, or it was just like you did everything at the end to like, oh, by the way?
Honestly, it was a little bit more like that. The cup was never, I mean, it would have been cool. I knew it existed,
Sure.
but I guess because I was a first degree black belt, like I didn't really think that
Right.
I would be necessarily, right. It wasn't on my radar. Like I wasn't necessarily prepping to win the cup. I was prepping to do well in my division. Like
Sure.
I did want to do that. The cup itself wasn't something that, right, like was it even really in my head? It kind of surprised me at the end. It was like, oh, by the way, and I was like, wait, what? Honestly, in the beginning, I didn't believe anybody when they told me that I was probably getting it. I thought that they were like messing with me. So yeah, it was more of a surprise at that point. But it was more just about when I was prepping for that tournament, it was just about being able I knew I wanted to do well in my division. You know a lot of the people that I competed against back then, that are still around. Once we got into that black belt division, it was a tough division.
Wow.
Whereas like some of the smaller tournaments, now I trained very hard when I trained in class. So, when I was a lower belt, there were some divisions where I could, like tournaments that I could walk into where I didn't maybe specifically tournament prep and, still do pretty well. But once I hit black belt, like if I didn't prep for a tournament, like I didn't want to compete because I knew who I was up against. And that was something that was so neat because it's like that, the rising tide, right? The rising tide just raises all, like, lifts all ships, right?
Yep.
And I feel like we all did that. We really sharpened each other because I knew who I would be stepping into that ring with. And I knew how good they were. And I needed to make sure that my prep was good enough to make me a competitor for them as well. And that was very special because like I said, we didn't train in the same studios. I didn't there was nobody in my studio that I competed against. So it was all from other studios. And that was just like very cool because it made me better because of how good they were. Mm-hmm. And I'm very grateful for that. I don't know that any of them realize like how much they helped me become the martial artist I am just because of how dedicated they were to what they were doing.
Absolutely. No, I 100% agree. And I kind of jealous that you didn't have to go up against people that you knew or were in school because I felt like that was half my division.
It did help a little bit because you don't, like, right, when you're training with people week in and week out, it's a little tricky, especially the spar. I'd say maybe the sparring I would anticipate being, or I would assume would be the hardest in that situation because you all know how each other spars because you're always right. Sparring against each other. So that was, we just had the memories from previous tournaments. Like I'd be like, oh, I remember, I mean, like Erin's all legs, right? Master right. Watson, like I know that about her, but I didn't train with her like consistently, but I knew if she was in my ring, I'd better protect my head.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Watch for those legs that would come at me.
So Master Angel Salona says, I'm dying to know if I competed against you. That was my first year, but I believe I was second dan. So you probably would have been with the just first degrees.
Yeah, we had big divisions
Yeah.
that year too. So probably, yeah, I think it was just a straight first dan division. I could be wrong, but I
That's
think,
usually what it was at
yeah,
World.
those divisions were so, even then, I want to say we had like 30 girls, 30 girls in that ring. It was big. And I think each one of those divisions were big. So yeah, I don't know that they would have put us together.
Just something like that, like hearing those numbers, you know, even if it's 15, like to even place in a division that big is pretty extraordinary. You know, having judged and you know, been judged. Um, a lot of times it has to do with intensity, and like you said, if you train hard in class, that'll come out. Was there anyone in particular that you trained with? Did Master DePietro help you on the side?
So that year, he actually also had gotten he was promoted to his master's belt at
Okay.
that Worlds. So he'd been prepped. It's funny because this is actually, I remember very distinctly him prepping for master's clinic that year for his testing. Because I would be at that point, you know, doing work or whatever, and he would go out onto the floor and train. And that made a distinct impression on me, just the intensity of his training, prepping just for the clinic, right?
Right.
And so as we were getting closer to the tournament, a lot of times, actually myself and Master Stum and Mr. DePietro, we were all teaching pretty much every day, you know, during that. And then we would train in our class, and then afterwards we would stay a couple of nights a week and just tournament prep for a couple of hours at it. Like I would say like an hour to 2 hours, like 3 or 4 times a week, we'd stay after classes and still train. So even though we weren't necessarily training, we were in the same space training, and they'd, you know, give me a lot of feedback and stuff. Like I said, it was definitely not only by my own ability. I had a lot of input. I had a lot of people helping me and giving me feedback and advice. But we spent a good number, like I'd say like a month or two, like working that intensely leading up to Worlds, which I also believe made a big difference. You know, a lot of the people that I compete against, very, very naturally gifted martial artists. I don't know that I necessarily put myself in that company. I just work very hard. You know, I think that really made a big difference.
So that year was a pretty special Worlds with Master Petro getting his master's rank, and then you winning the cup.
And that was also the year that Rob Massaroni won the cup as well.
That's right. Yeah.
From VBA. So that was really cool. And actually, that year it was a 3-way tie for that cup as well. I don't know if you know that. Yeah. Master Massaroni, he'd gotten 3 firsts. Mr. Stephen DePietro got in 3 firsts, and Sal Cavento had also gotten 3 firsts.
Wow.
You know, for that year. So it was like a 3-way tie. It was a pretty intense tournament for that. Yeah, it was kind of cool. Yeah, and then like I said, he got his master's belt as well, and yeah, it was special.
Awesome. Did you know Rob that well?
Yeah, because he was also very good friends with Master DePietro and, you know, with Master Stum and all of them. I mean, he would often come up to the studio as well every now and then to either, you know, train with us or like help teach a little, you know, like come in as a guest instructor. So yeah, I grown like very friendly with him over the years. We become friends, you know, pretty well. You know, same thing, you know, at clinics and
Sure, yeah.
different things and tournaments, you know, we'd always spend time talking to each other. So I think that's also what made it so special. It was really neat, like getting the cup with somebody that I knew well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It just kind of changed it a little bit more, you know.
That's cool. Now, after that, did you compete much after that?
I don't remember. I don't think so. I believe I did want to compete again the following year, but I got injured. Well, the following Worlds, but I did get injured prepping for that tournament.
Mhm.
And what was starting to happen then was the focus was starting to shift from competing to teaching more. You know, like I said, you know, when I would compete, especially because of the division that I was in, I would do a lot of tournament prep. And I think that there's a point where that shift sometimes happens where, if I can't put in the time that I want to, I didn't know that I wanted to go into the ring at that point like that. And then it was starting to become a case of, where did I want to put my time, right? Was it in more into teaching and working with the students that we have, or do I take that time for myself to compete? And I think that's a natural shift that we all go through. I miss competing a lot. I definitely would enjoy doing it again every now and then. But at that point, it was more about helping the other kids and the other students, start being able to do that, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And so, and at that point, the studio was huge, right?
Yeah, and that's just it, right? We were running big classes, and the studio was doing incredibly well. We were all teaching together. We were teaching 6 days a week.
Right. And
So there's not as much time available.
we're talking like how many, 250 to 300 students, right?
Um, Before, I'm trying to remember now what the timing on this was. Right before we split to open up the second location, we were actually at like nearly 410.
Wow.
At one point. I mean, it was a different time. I mean,
Sure.
karate was definitely big back then. And like I said, that's one of the reasons we also opened up that second location. But yeah, no, it was a very interesting time. Sorry, somebody's just busy popping through. Yeah, I apologize. I don't know what's going on. Sorry, Tim, hold on. I can't find it. There we go. Sorry.
That's okay.
It's good. Am I back? I'm sorry.
Yes, we're back.
Yes, there we go. Sorry, I don't know what happened.
Real quick as an aside, Lindsay asked if you had the opportunity, did you take part of in the ladies demonstration in 2018 at Worlds? Were you there for Worlds that year?
I wasn't there for 2018. It was one of it because I was here teaching.
Yeah. Gotcha. So I'm trying to remember. Maybe it was. So I remember. I'm trying to think of what year it was. If it was 2006 or 2008, where Master DePietro was sick, and they actually announced that he had passed away at Worlds.
Yeah, that would have been 2008.
2008
when that happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember someone told me, and before they had announced it, and it was shock. Well, it wasn't shocking because everyone knew that he was ill.
Right.
But it's still, I mean, how old was he? He
was 32.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, so very young. And it's the same thing. You don't expect people that are young and kind of in the prime of their life and healthy and in shape and all of that, to deal with that. But one of the lessons you learn, we don't know when our time's going to come. And, so to live your life well is really important. I mean, we'd lost Master Massaroni the year before that. Right. And then Master DePietro the following year, so it was some, a tough couple of years, especially when you're seeing people so young.
Right.
And so, who looked after themselves so well go through that.
Absolutely. Yeah. You just look around and it's like, man, it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Like you said, you're not promised anything. And even in these times, Aaron and I are the same way. It's like, we only have a certain amount of time on, available. So you got to do what you can with the time.
Right. There's actually, I'm trying to remember if it's a quote or a poem that I've always loved. It's called The Dash, and they talk about, you have the year that you're born and, the year that you die. And it's that dash in the middle. That's the most important, right? It's what you do with that time. Yeah. And that was the one thing that always left a huge impression with me with Master DePietro is what he did with his dash. Like in his 32 years, the amount of lives that he touched and the people's lives that he changed, right, was huge. Some people don't achieve that if they live to be like, 100 and whatever. And that always really struck me, is just the difference that he made. And it's one of the things that I just strive to do is just if I could make like even a fraction of the impact that he did, I'd consider my life to be successful.
Well, I think there's no question that that's happened. I mean, since that time, I mean, obviously you were devoted and committed to teaching and running the studio then, but then once he passed, obviously that became an even more of a focus for yourself and Master Stum, and then his brother Mr. Petro. Um, I know you said that those years before, when that happened, you guys kind of hunkered down and really tried to keep the studio going. What did you learn from those times? Like, obviously, we're in tough times now. I can't imagine how tough those times were right after he passed away.
Yeah, it was a combination. One is that he really set us up well, which was just another part of who he was. Even while he was sick, making sure that we would be okay, that we would know what to do. He spent a lot of that time kind of training us and shifting um some of the responsibilities, so that because at that point, if it was going to happen and when it was going to happen, he wanted to make sure that we were prepared. So I think there was some blessing in the fact that there was time,
Right.
because he could spend that time helping us make sure that we would be okay. I think that added a lot to it. The fact that we had all spent so much time together, and obviously Master Stum was, it was his family, and Mr. Peter was their family. Like, you want to kind of just make it happen. And I'd been around long enough. They're my family in whatever sense.
Right.
You want to make that. I don't think it's always blood. And through then, honestly, in that time period, it was just one day at a time. You did the best you can with what you had, and you just you focused on the kids, you focused on the students, and just getting through one day, and you're getting through the next day. And and eventually it just gets a little bit easy or different. I'm not really sure. There's still moments where it can be tough, but it's like anything, right? It's the same thing like we're now. We don't know what's going on. You put one foot in front of the other, right? It's the little steps that eventually get you where you need to go. If you're looking at the big picture, that can sometimes be very overwhelming, especially when you're kind of in the midst of all of that. Communication was obviously very important.
Right.
Among ourselves, and just the banding together, and trying to support each other. And and our students were amazing. They really can kind of help just by staying loyal and working through and understanding that we were trying to also just kind of figure it out. We had different people reach out within the association as kind of the years went by. I mean, that we Master Godwin obviously opened up his trainings to us as well. If we needed any guidance or help, he was very happy and willing to step in, and it was great. And we'd have different instructors that would just kind of check in now and then and just see if we needed anything. But like I said, the one thing that I was always grateful for, and always was just that he set us up so well. Like when he could have just been focusing on himself, he wanted to make sure that we were going to be okay.
Awesome. Since then, you've had you and Master Stum have kind of been partners, right? In the studio. How is it working with him, and how's the dynamic as far as you guys working together?
It works really, really well. We enjoy each other a lot, which is helpful. Like I said, we've known each other for 23 years. Like, he really feels like a bit of an older brother to me. A lot of times, he likes to give me a hard time, which you've been privy to, but it's
Sure.
it's always in good fun. I think one of the things that's really neat is I think we balance each other out very well. He has some amazing strengths in areas that I just don't.
Right.
And and there's things that I can bring to the table, that's not necessarily his strong suits. And I think that's what makes it work so well. I think we just bring a good balance to the studio and to each other. And like I said, when you've and like the people that you've trained with and taught with for years and years and years, they become family to you. And I enjoy working with him, which makes a big difference too. I can't imagine working with people I don't like, or that stress me. I mean, I know people will say it, they've got coworkers that
Sure.
they just don't jive with, and I never really had that. It was just, it always worked.
Yeah. I've always I've never, I'm not great by myself, but if I have someone that I can partner with and work together with, um, it usually works out better. Cause like you said, you can figure out who has the strengths here, who has the strengths here, and kind of work
Right.
together.
And
Well,
especially when you've been doing it for a while, you can anticipate a little bit about what's happening. So you don't necessarily, I can watch by the way he's starting to set things up, kind of anticipate where he's going to be going with it
sure.
and start like prepping things ahead of time. And that's just stuff that comes from years and years and years of working together,
Right.
which is neat. And, sometimes, you don't have a great day and you can have somebody that can step in and kind of take the lead, or life happens as well. And I think when you're on your own, it's hard, right? Because you don't always have somebody that can step in and take over a class, or do things. Whereas when you've got that kind of teamwork going, there's always somebody that you can lean on when you need to.
Absolutely. Um, and then you have your accent, and then you have his Philly accent. It goes
Yes,
together perfectly, right?
absolutely, they're almost identical.
So I call him. He's my Philly twin. We
I know, the same birthdays
same
there.
birthday and year.
But he's older though, right? No, he's older though, right?
I don't know if we ever figure that out. We're the exact same day, exact same year. So
Oh, it is the same year. You guys are the
yeah,
same age. Very cool.
I can't say we ever figured out like what time of the day we were
That's
born.
so fun. And you guys look so identical too.
Yeah, absolutely. About the same size and everything. um, so you mentioned the Master Godwin trainings, and I said earlier that's where we started a friendship, and through training and seeing each other through different things. I know you had an opportunity to go to Master's Clinic the same year that my wife Erin went to, as well as Master Setianto.
I'll
Uh,
tell you what, that was awesome.
yeah,
The group of us that were able to go
an
together
angel,
through that. Yeah, there was so, and Master Heiss
right?
was in that group as well. From Region A, we had a pretty solid group that year,
That's
and
right.
I remember it was such a distinct feeling when we were doing our act, like the first test. It just felt like we were just all training together again. I mean, it was intense in that, but there was just this feeling of being on the floor with people that we've all trained together. We all knew each other. We were all friends.
Mhm.
It was I don't know if everybody experiences that when they're in that position, but I know for me, I remember being on the floor and kind of being like, this is really cool. Like, I'm surrounded by my friends. I'm surrounded by people I'm very comfortable with. We all support each other. And I don't know that it's always, I'm sure, I mean, there's always camaraderie, don't get me
Right.
wrong, but I think just the tightness of the group, just in general, and how many of us were from Region 8 and how many of us had trained together and competed against each other, made that a very unique experience for me, and very special.
Mhm.
And also just a lot of fun. I think it changed the whole tone of the test. I mean, it was hard and we pushed each other, but
Mhm.
yeah, it was very cool. And yeah, like having, Master, your wife, yeah, Master Watson there with us too. It was really, really, I would anticipate a unique kind of group dynamic that we had.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember that, and then I remember Master Robinson did a little thing afterwards, like a celebration, and
Hmm.
it was a big group. But yeah, like you said, it was a great group between yourself and Aaron and Jeff and Faith and
Yeah, Faith was in there too. Yep, Martha.
elite
Who else?
martial
I mean,
arts.
we're missing a bunch. Yeah, Angel, all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, Jim from the Poconos. Yeah, a lot of great martial artists. That was a big Region 8 year. I remember when there was kind of a bottleneck, and then everyone went at the same time.
Right.
Um, I had the same experience. I know, as far as like just thinking it was fun. It was nerve wracking. It was hard. I know not everyone has that same experience, but I definitely shared that kind of excitement and fun experience from you. Um, what does your training going forward now look like? I know obviously right now it's crazy, and we were talking about getting together for at least with Master Setianto some training. Have you had any opportunities to train? I'm
Not
guessing.
at the moment. we definitely need to get back to it. I always enjoyed those mornings when we could get together to do it. Just right now, between having the kids here for the virtual camps and then the classes and then the online, it's just your time kind of gets sucked away from you a little bit. These kids, I have to be up by 7 a.m. because they start arriving at 7:30, and a lot of times we're leaving at 8ish. It's long days, so but I do miss it. I want to get back to it.
You're staying all the way through for classes too? Wow.
Yep.
That's tough. Are you teaching too, or is it yeah?
Yeah, so
Like the Energizer Bunny.
we'll see. As long as hopefully it doesn't have to go too much longer.
That's right. I was going to say
we can start shifting out of this a little bit and opening some of that time up.
Nice. How are like East Coast karate? Obviously, we talked about the COVID. Before all that happened this year, everything's good with the dojang. I know you had one of the legacy transplants, Mr. Brandon Downs, got to spend some time with you guys. Is he now?
Yeah, he is. That was actually a great, very fortuitous, I would say, at the time. He switched schools, so for college, that was a lot closer to us. And it was right around the time some of our assistant instructors were all leaving to go to college as well. So the shift kind of happened very well. It was very seamless. So no, he's you can tell that he's had some great instruction himself. So it's been a real blessing to us to have him here, and we're very grateful for the work that everybody did with him to make him the kind of instructor that he is.
Sure. We're starting to wind down. We're almost at an hour. As far as your coming up, do you have any memories or the Grandmaster Shen memories or moments that kind of stick out in your mind coming up through the ranks?
Him and I would have a couple of conversations over the years, and the thing with him that was always impressive to me was the same thing, the fact that he would remember so many little details about you and your life. If you'd mentioned to him one time, when that he's just dealing with so many people, if we'd seen me and we'd had a little bit of a conversation about some things, the following year, next time we would see each other, which could be, a couple of months in between events and stuff, the fact that he would remember to ask follow-up questions about it and stuff like that was just always very impressive. I was very grateful being in Region 8 that we got to have a lot more access to him, than a lot of other regions do. It was definitely very beneficial. He was a good man.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you for joining me. Is there anything you would like to share with everyone out there watching before we finish up?
I just, maybe just the to not take lightly the value of the relationships that you can build through this. We joked about that text string and that group that we're in, but through the last 6 months, there have been times where that's been such a huge thing, just having people that you've trained with that that are kind of going through the same things. I think the value of the relationships that we make within this association, within our style, within our training is priceless. And I think sometimes we take it for granted. And I feel like that, this has just really highlighted how important it is to have that network around you. And I'm just very grateful for all the people that I've met through the years through this and the friendships that I've developed, because it makes a difference.
Yeah, that's a good point. Some people, they're either take it for granted or don't realize they have it.
Yes.
So if anyone's watching and in World Tong Sudo or in Region 8 and they have a question, there's probably someone out there that can help you. Whether it's business or martial arts or whatever the case may be, there's probably someone out there more than willing to help you out. And I think your story highlights that a lot. Like you said, you think of all the names that you mentioned that have helped you throughout the years. And I'm the same way. I wouldn't have gotten where we are without the people that have helped us along. So
absolutely.
And I'm certain that there's lots of people out there that feel the same with you and East Coast Karate.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining me.
You're welcome.
It wasn't the line of questioning wasn't too bad.
No, I'm good. I survived, so we're good.
Now I get to go into the real questions now. Well, have a great weekend, and hopefully I will see you on the mat to train together soon.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See ya.
Talk to you later, Tim. Bye.